Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, the world outside eerily silent, only to realize you're not alone. The darkness hides things you can't see, but you can feel them, watching, waiting. Some of the most terrifying encounters happen in the dead of night, when the rest of the world is asleep and you're left completely vulnerable. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into 3 horrifying true stories of people who found themselves trapped in terrifying situations during the dead of night. Let's begin. Story 1, The Shadow in the Hallway by Elliot Raines. When I moved into my first apartment, I was excited to finally have a space of my own. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building. But it was mine. The only downside was the hallway outside my unit. It always felt wrong, dimly lit, eerily silent, and with an unsettling draft even when all the windows were shut. My neighbors were quiet, and I barely saw anyone coming or going. The first few nights were uneventful, but I quickly realized something strange about the building. Every night around 2 a.m., I'd wake up for no reason. Not to use the bathroom, not because of a nightmare, I'd just wake up. At first, I brushed it off as a weird sleep habit, but then I started hearing things. Soft footsteps in the hallway, moving slowly past my door. At first, I assumed it was one of my neighbors, but the pacing was strange. It never seemed to lead anywhere, just back and forth, like someone was waiting. One night I woke up as usual, feeling that now familiar unease. But this time, the footsteps didn't just pass by. They stopped, right in front of my door. My breath caught in my throat as I lay there listening, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself it was just a neighbor fumbling with their keys, but then I heard it, a soft knock. It wasn't loud, just barely audible, but it was enough to send a wave of cold terror through me. I sat up, frozen, staring at the door. The knock came again, slightly harder this time. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking as I turned on the flashlight. There was no peephole, so I had no way of knowing who or what was on the other side. Then the worst thing happened. The doorknob began to turn, not quickly, not like someone trying to force their way in, but slowly, deliberately. My stomach twisted as I realized whoever was out there wasn't in a hurry. They were testing the lock, checking if they could slip inside. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. Should I call the police? Yell? But before I could move, the knob stopped turning. Silence filled the air. My apartment felt too quiet. Then I heard the footsteps again. But this time, they weren't retreating down the hall. They were inside my apartment. My entire body went numb. I hadn't heard the door open. The lock was still engaged. But something was in here with me. The air felt heavier, suffocating. I could barely breathe as I forced myself to stay still, listening. A long, wheezing breath filled the room. Not mine. It came from the far corner of my bedroom. I turned my phone's flashlight toward the sound, my hands trembling. The beam of light cut through the darkness and hit nothing. The room was empty, but the moment the light touched that corner, the heavy air lifted. It felt as if something had just vanished. Shaking, I jumped out of bed and ran to check my door. Still locked. My windows, still closed. There was no possible way someone had been in my apartment, yet I knew. I wasn't alone in that room. The next day, I packed my things and broke my lease. I didn't care about the fees. I didn't care that my landlord thought I was crazy. I just knew that whatever had been pacing outside my door at night had finally found a way in, and I wasn't going to wait around to see if it came back. Story 2, The Man in the Rest Stop by Jared Holt. I used to work the overnight shift at a remote rest stop off a quiet Wyoming highway. It wasn't much, just a small convenience store, a couple of vending machines, and a dimly lit bathroom building. Travelers only stopped if they were desperate for gas or needed a quick break. My shifts were usually uneventful, with maybe 3 or 4 customers between midnight and sunrise. I spent most nights cleaning, stocking shelves, and listening to static, filled radio broadcasts. But one night, something happened that I still can't explain. It was just past 3 a.m. when I noticed him. A man stood outside right at the edge of the overhead lights. He wasn't near a car, nor did he seem to have come from the road. He was just there. At first, I assumed he was a trucker stretching his legs, but something about him was unsettling. He was tall, unnaturally so, his frame almost too thin. His hands hung limply at his sides and his head was tilted slightly, as if watching me. I tried to ignore him and focused on wiping down the coffee station, but when I glanced up a few minutes later, he was closer. Now standing just outside the glass doors. He wasn't trying to come in. He wasn't waving. He was just staring. A cold wave of unease crawled up my spine. I'd dealt with my fair share of weird customers before. Drunk people, lost travelers, even the occasional tweaker. But this was different. He wasn't swaying, wasn't muttering to himself. He was eerily still. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to act normal. "We're open if you need anything," I called out. My voice sounded too loud in the empty lot. The man didn't respond. He just stood there. Then slowly he turned and walked toward the restroom building. Relieved, I let out a breath and returned to my seat behind the counter. But something wasn't right. I hadn't seen or heard any cars pull in for over an hour. Where had he come from? Curious, I pulled up the security camera feed on the monitor. The grainy footage showed the lot. I rewound the past hour, scanning for movement. Nothing. No approaching vehicles. No footsteps from the road. He had just appeared. A chill crept through me. I switched to the bathroom camera. The entrance door was still slightly open from when I last cleaned it. The man had gone in a few minutes ago, but he hadn't come out. I stared at the screen, waiting. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No movement. My gut twisted with unease. Something felt wrong. Every instinct told me to lock the doors, stay inside, and call the police. But a nagging thought crept in. What if someone else went in there and never came out? Gripping my flashlight, I stepped outside. The cold night air pressed against my skin as I walked toward the restroom building. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The fluorescent lights inside flickered, casting erratic shadows. Empty. The 2 stalls were open. No feet under them. No one inside. But the air felt thick, charged with something unnatural. A damp, musty smell lingered, like old wood and earth. My flashlight beam trembled slightly as I scanned the corners. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of movement. I turned to leave, heart pounding, when I saw it, writing smudged into the dusty mirror. "Don't follow me!" I stepped back, ice creeping through my veins. Suddenly, a sharp sound, like a whisper of shifting fabric, came from the stall behind me. My breath caught. I whirled around, but the stall was empty. That was enough. I bolted out of the bathroom and back to the store, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it, my hands shaking. Then I looked up. Through the glass, just beyond the reach of the lights, the man was back, watching me. But now I could see his face, or rather, the lack of one. Where his features should have been was nothing. Just smooth, pale skin stretched too tightly over bone. He stood motionless, tilting his head slightly, just like before. Then, without warning, he took a step back, and another, and then he vanished. I never saw him again, but sometimes when I drive past that rest stop, I swear I feel his gaze still following me, watching, waiting. Story 3, The Lone Passenger by Eric Calloway. I've been a truck driver for 15 years, mostly driving long-haul night routes. The solitude never bothered me. I like the quiet and the open road. But one night in 2022, something happened that made me question ever driving at night again. I was hauling cargo through rural West Virginia, a stretch of highway cutting through endless forest. It was after 2 a.m., and I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. My headlights were the only source of light, illuminating the empty pavement and occasional road sign. There was no cell service, which wasn't unusual, but it always made me uneasy. Then up ahead, I saw something. A figure stood on the side of the road, right at the edge of my headlights. My stomach dropped. What was someone doing out here in the middle of nowhere? As I got closer, I could see he was tall and thin, dressed in dark clothes. He didn't wave, didn't step forward, just stood there completely still. I passed him, a chill creeping up my spine. Then curiosity got the better of me. I glanced in my side mirror. For a split second, I saw his face, pale, hollow eyes staring directly at me. Then in a blink, he was gone. My grip tightened on the wheel. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But then something happened that made my blood freeze. I checked my rearview mirror. He was in my back seat. I slammed on the brakes, my entire rig lurching as I veered onto the shoulder. My breath came in ragged gasps as I spun around. Nothing. The seats were empty. My duffel bag sat undisturbed. But the air inside the cab felt wrong. Thick, heavy, charged. I shook it off and kept driving. The next few miles were silent. No wind, no crickets, no distant hum of another vehicle. Then my radio crackled. A burst of static, followed by something else. A faint whisper. "Keep driving. Don't stop." My stomach twisted. My fingers trembled as I reached for the radio, but all I got was static. Then my headlights flickered. For a split second, in the dark, I saw him again, in my passenger seat. I swerved violently. The headlights came back on and he was gone. I pressed the gas pedal harder, heart hammering. When I finally spotted a gas station up ahead, glowing like a beacon in the darkness, I pulled in so fast my tires screeched. I jumped out, locking the doors behind me, and rushed inside. The cashier gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. I just needed to be around people. I stayed inside for nearly an hour, sipping bad coffee and trying to convince myself I was imagining things. When I finally worked up the nerve to check my truck, I hesitated before opening the door. I climbed in, locking the doors immediately. I checked the seats, the mirrors, everything. It was empty, just me. I exhaled, relieved. Maybe it had all been in my head. Then I saw it. In the dust on my windshield, smeared like a handprint, was a message. "See you soon." That was the last time I ever drove long-haul night routes. Some things just aren't worth the paycheck. But it wasn't over. A week later, I was driving a short road in broad daylight, miles away from that highway. My mind had finally settled. I convinced myself it was a hallucination, a mix of exhaustion and paranoia. Then at a red light, my CB radio crackled. It wasn't static this time. It was breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Then that same whisper. "Keep driving. Don't stop." The light turned green, but I couldn't move. My entire body locked up, hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. A horn blared behind me, snapping me back. I hit the gas and sped away, my pulse pounding in my ears. I never used that radio again. And to this day, every time I check my rearview mirror at night, I brace myself, because I know one day he'll be there again. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. Which of these stories gave you a chilling experience? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are real.